as stated, I have been in quite a number of roles. I have been in the talent acquisition space for, let's just say, over 20 years to be nice and leave it at that. I've done recruiting, I've done sourcing, I've done RPO, I've done corporate, I've done agency, and now I'm working with a consulting group. So I've had a lot of experience. And what I have really noticed along the way, and I'm sure you guys have, is that employment trends just tend to swing. There's never been a full 5 year time that I've been in the business where things haven't either gone really far up or really far down. By a show of hands, you can just use the little thing and raise your hand. How many of you all in the last 5 years have been through a layoff, a downsizing, a restructure, started a new job, left the industry? How many folks do we have there? Yeah, as I suspected. So nothing in this business is really permanent. But what we're going to talk about, and Pete touched on a couple of these, so it's great to kind of piggyback on a few things, um, is what to do with yourself about these sorts of situations. We have talked a lot, and we will touch a little bit on candidates. But what I have found is that there's a great saying that says doctors are the worst patients. And recruiters are sometimes the worst candidates. They are the ones who don't always know what and how to do to take the next steps. So we're just going to walk through these quickly. You can find me on LinkedIn if you have additional questions after this. But this is something that I wish someone had told me 15 years ago when I was laid off for like the second time. And I'm like, what am I supposed to be doing with myself? Well, let me tell you. First of all, let's talk about the trends. As you can see, starting in winter 19 up until kind of this past year, you can see where hiring trends have been going up and then down and then down and then up and then down. And unfortunately, TA positions are generally the ones that are hardest hit in these areas. Um, Accounting, marketing, IT, customer service are the next hardest impacted, but for some reason, lucky us, when people sense any sort of disturbance in the talent acquisition force, they start slashing budget in the human resources area, which leaves us to kind of figure out what's our next step there. So one of the things is it's not just enough to know how to recruit and source for candidates during these market swings. I think Pete touched on some really good things that can be done to engage your candidates. But this is kind of a year where as we move into 2025, I'm definitely focusing, and I hope all of you focus a little bit more on your own emotional, financial, and job health. um, so I would really like you guys to start taking the time to think about what does this actually mean for you? What are your next steps? So, we've got this list of things that says these are the things that people look for when they join a company. Are these things that you're looking for? What's most important to you? What is something that really strikes you as being important as you look forward? One of the important things that I've found is to try and approach things with a blank slate and not compare what your next opportunity might be with either where you are now or where you were in the past, because situations might be completely different, culture might be different, even though the title might be the same. As we all know, there's nuances here and there. Different companies focus on different things. So the first thing you should do is kind of make yourself a dream list. If you had your choice of what company you would go to work for next, what do those companies look like? Make yourself a dream list. and then start doing the research. And by research, I mean really get down in the weeds. Who's running that company? Who's on the board? What are their ethics? What do they believe in? What's their mission statements? What have their financials been? And not just in the past year, go back 6, 8 quarters and see if they have any sort of longevity and security. If the company isn't secure, they're definitely not going to be secure for you. And the last thing you need is to jump out, get into another role, and then be, downsized again. Is there anybody you know there, anybody who used to be there that you can reach out to and have a really candid conversation? I know there was somebody who reached out to me about a company that I had worked for quite a number of years ago and said, "What do you think?" And I was like, "I don't know how it is now, but when I was there, let me just use the phrase run, Forrest, run. Just get out there and go as far as fast as you can away from that company." Um, in other situations, I've been like, I really loved it there. There just wasn't any place else for me to move to, and that's the reason why I left. So if you know some people there or can, get some inside scoop, that's always great. And while you're researching, one of the things that you can do is tuck away interesting people that you see at conferences or see at one of these type of events or some of the virtual networking events that are now prevalent on a podcast, and add them to two lists. One, personal prospects for when you are, recruiting and placing people, and also personal prospects for when you're looking for something for yourself. This is somebody that you want to hold on to, cultivate that relationship that Pete was talking about with that interpersonal touch and finding your commonalities, and keep that top of mind. And then as you're out there looking and thinking about what you're going to do next, check the calendar. As we all know, in a lot of cases near the end of the year, throughout the holidays, it's tough. A lot of companies don't want to make that move. A lot of them start looking at what their headcount forecasts are going to be. Not that they're ever right, but they do try and look at their headcount forecast to see what's coming. Is it spring break? Is it time for kids to go back to school? There's times when it's easier for you to kind of reach out, make connections, and make a move than other times. Companies um, tend not to hire during some of these downtimes, and if you have prospects, they tend not to move during these. So this is actually a really great time right now to start diversifying your skill set, particularly if you've been in the business for a while. There's always something else, something new to learn besides AI. God bless AI, but you'll AI is something everybody will have in their pocket. But when was the last time you really, really looked at your resume? I mean, I think I took a look at mine, and this will age me, but I still had something back on there from the late 1990s, and I was like, what? No one, Michelle. It's like no one cares what I was doing in 1997. So I hadn't updated some of the verbiage to be a little bit more relevant to the way that we discuss things now and the way that we look at projects, the way that we look at your financial and social impact to a company. So one of the things that I really focused in on, if you're of a certain age, you remember we used to get these books as children called highlighters, and there was a game that you would play in there called Getting the Main Idea. And you would read this little paragraph, and then you had to say what the main idea was. Someone should be able to take a look at your resume and without digging too deeply, should be able to look at it and say, oh, this person is a master sourcer. They've done tech, they've done this, they've done that. And here's the impact that they've had on the companies. If you can't do that with a glance, then it's time to refurbish the main idea. And also, feel free to make the top of your resume a little bit of a brag sheet. I mean, you've done the work, you've earned it. Put it up there, as well as your objectives and what you think you're looking at next. You can say, I was rated beyond exceptional in the following three areas. Go let your little light shine while you're out there. Then stop, take a second, and be honest about your own strengths and weaknesses. This is something that I found not necessarily humiliating, but it did give me pause when I really stopped and kind of looked at a list of things, areas where I always know what I do really well. It takes me longer, of course, to figure out what I have not done well. Go back and look at what your previous managers, coworkers, and even subordinates have complimented you on, and other things that they've told you might need improvement, and see if that's something where you have moved the needle at all. And then, are you fluent in the latest technologies and sourcing methodologies? You don't have to know how to do everything. But for instance, if you're an IT recruiter or sourcer or leader, do you know what the newest tech is out there? Can you speak to somebody? I'm not asking you to program. I'm just asking you to be able to have an intelligent conversation with a software engineer about it. So these are the sorts of things that you should be looking at as you continue your movement forward. And then go ahead and feel free to upskill. Inhale as much knowledge about what your preferred role is going to be and the markets that you recruit and source for. Take time, listen to podcasts, take online courses, read articles, go to conferences. One of the things that I really like to do is to get demos on new tools. You don't have to purchase them, just get the demos. That way you can always kind of have in the back of your mind recommendations for what might be great to use. And if you have the ability to invest in market research, do it. It's pricey, but priceless, really. And then also, don't be afraid to reinvent yourself. So you've been sourcing for 20 years. Do you want to do that for the next 2, 5, 10 years? What is it that you think you want to do next? And really sit down and think about what your path to get to the next place is. A really good friend of mine had been in recruiting and sourcing and was just fried, completely burnt out, and found a pathway to get over to the training side of the business. And I was like, training? Really? She was like, I absolutely love it. On top of that, it was a fresh challenge for her, and she could get up and look at the next days of her career as something that she was excited about doing. So, and then feel free to leverage and grow your network. This is something that we're getting much, much better at, using all the social tools. But again, as Pete mentioned, nothing really replaces the live interaction, actually getting out, meeting and greeting people, shaking hands, giving them a handshake. I will not remember who sent me an email 12 weeks ago, but I will remember a guy who came up to me at Fire Tech and said, "Hey, I really love what you guys are doing." Da 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 da. So, look at opportunities to get out in front of people or launch the opportunities. My sister, who's also in talent acquisition, she and I hosted uh, TA meet and greet for Dallas Fort Worth, where we live, last weekend, the weekend before last. And we just invited some folks to come out to a wine bar. And it was great because some people knew each other and hadn't seen each other in a long time. Other people had talked on the phone but had never seen each other face to face. And for other people, it was new opportunities. And so um, it cost us nothing. Well, we did pay for everybody's first drink for coming out, but you don't have to do that. Everybody could come enjoy themselves, but little things like that are still a challenge. Another thing that I hear people laugh about, business cards. You don't necessarily have to have paper business cards, but there are a lot of old school people out there who still like business cards. At the very least, get yourself a virtual business card using something like Hi Hello or the LinkedIn option or some sort of QR code. Again, people will remember you when you pop up and there's your smiling face, but have something that you can leave behind with a person. So, it's my tips and tools on that. And then how to market yourself. I'm going to take this moment to send out a prayer and a small beg. Do not email people with 5 paragraphs and your resume and say, I think you're great. Do you have anything open in your at your company? By the way, here's the 20 things you need to know about me. I've also attached my resume. Don't do that. No one wants to read that. Um, so that's a no-no. And then the other thing that's a no-no is just to fire it out rapid fire. We call that the paint splatter theory, where you're just throwing paint at a wall to see what sticks. That's not a beautiful way to paint. So only reach out to your target audience. Make sure you've actually directed your messaging to that audience. So that again, as Pete said, it doesn't sound like, hi, fill in name here. I met you at fill in place here and would like to talk to you about fill in opportunity here. So, really structure it and make it personal. If there was something that you had in common with somebody, like Pete was saying, a book that they were reading or a podcast that they'd attended, those are the things. Because really, what you're trying to do is educate people on who you are, what you do, and what you'd like. And don't be afraid to say, here's what I'm looking to do next. So in your mind, you should have a brief pitch about yourself, always on the go. You should have one for in person, the ye old elevator pitch. You should have one with a cover letter and one that is kind of your personal executive summary. Those are three things you should have ready and updated at any moment in time. Also, don't feel schemish about showing some personality. Personality gets remembered long after, oh, they spent 10 years at Google. That's great. But something about you that will resonate. Everybody has some sort of personality. Feel free to bring yours to the forefront and, go ahead and sparkle if that's what you do. And then if there's something unique that you offer, perhaps you are brilliant at data analytics and you saw something about this company where you think, hey, I noticed that you guys have done X number of sources from this particular source and would like to have an opportunity to talk to you about ways to excel in that area. Just give them something unique, even if it seems random to you, it'll stick with that person because it's not the same old thing that they've read over and over again. And then also, when you are reaching out to people, leave the conversation open. So don't close off and say, okay, thanks, bye. Make sure I sometimes leave it with a question. Thank you for your time today. Is there anything else you would like to hear about me, so we can continue this conversation? So at the very least, a slightly polite person will at least write back and say, not at this time, which is their nice way of saying go away. And then you can also set up a time. Let me know if you have time to chat with me in person, give them a Calendly link or whatever. But one of those two things should close out your marketing reach out. So, and then as you remember, in recruiting and sourcing, phone calls do still work. I know we think they're old school, but there is something about having a phone call. Um, you don't have to be so reliant on email and AI and video and text. If someone is kind enough to give you their phone number, feel free to use it. They'll remember because we don't do a ton of phone calls anymore. Almost everything is via video. So feel free to go old school when you're trying to get out there and market yourselves. That's it. I think I was right on time. So, does anyone have any questions for me in the next 2 minutes? Otherwise, I'd like to thank you guys for your time. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to continue the conversation.